Hey there. Welcome to this week's episode of Next Level Play Therapy. And for those of you who are joining me live, welcome on this live weekly live stream. If you're watching on the replay of the video live stream, welcome, welcome, welcome. And for those of you listening on the podcast, welcome. Today is February 14th. Valentine's Day. So I thought it would be fun to focus today's episode on Valentine's Day themes. And typically we think of Valentine's Day as celebration of romantic love, which if you're working with children, this is important within a family systems context. And what I mean by that is parents need to have a strong marital relationship if they're together, or a couples relationship if they're together. It's a little different. That's not necessarily the case. But if they're remarried with their other partners after a divorce or separation, it's important for those parents to have strong couples relationship, because that's really the foundation of the family system. And that means parents are able to work together, that they're able to navigate through and resolve any conflict or differences of opinion without significant distress and overload to the family system. Today's episode, though, I want to focus on family systems as it relates to parent and child, or parent and children. And the focus here really is about secure attachment, love, and connection. So I've always thought of Valentine's Day also for, connecting with my partner. Also, though, connecting as a family and building secure relationships within our nuclear family system. And so I thought it would be fun to share some ideas to facilitate that. Before I dive into the activities, I really wanted to create a foundation first. And what I mean by create that foundation first is to think about some foundational concepts that are important when you're providing play therapy. And so I want to run through those first, which are basically case conceptualization and treatment planning and how those are connected, and the therapeutic powers of play, which are what set play therapy apart from simply pulling out games and toys. Last week, we had a full week of celebrating International Play Therapy Week. So there was a lot of talk about play therapy and what is play therapy. And last week in my last week's episode, I talked about the foundations of play therapy and what sets play therapy apart. This week, I wanted to follow up with that a little bit in terms of making sure there's a strong foundation when you're using your activities that's grounded in a theoretical model. And that's how you access the therapeutic powers of play. Those are important. It's also important to really understand case conceptualization, how that relates to your play therapy model, and then how you use that for treatment planning. Because when you're thinking about activities, you really want to have that strong foundation of what is your case conceptualization and how has that influenced your treatment planning. And the treatment planning is essentially what are you doing to help your client resolve whatever problem they're experiencing for coming in. If you're interested in these, I've done some previous episodes, so you may want to go back and check out my YouTube channel on the live page, because you'll find all my live stream replays, all the video replays, which if you're listening on the podcast, you may want to do that because I'm going to show you some things. So you may want to pop over to my YouTube channel on the live stream tab and watch the live stream so you can see what I'm talking about. I'll try to explain as much as possible. So on the audio, you'll be able to get a sense as well. And making sure, so when we go over the activities, making sure that you have a really strong foundation. If you really want to take a deep dive into the how to do that case conceptualization in play therapy and use that for your treatment planning, also creating treatment plans with goals and objectives that'll meet any agency and insurance requirements, most of them, then stay tuned for the end because I am going to talk a little bit more about some online courses. They're self-paced. So those are really go walk you step by step. So if you're interested in those, definitely stay through the end and I'll talk a little bit more about those. Today's episode, I want to talk about attachment and create using some attachment activities. So let's get started. First, what are the best techniques for connection? Are these to me are good ones. I use these all the time. I would love to know what you guys are doing as we're thinking. One of the things that I love about doing training with play therapists is that as I'm going through and doing activities, you guys tap into your creativity and come up with other ways of using strategies, and that kind of sparks some ideas for you. So share those in the comments if you're watching. And I would love to know who's here watching on the live stream or the replay, or if you're listening to the podcast, post in the comments your name, where you're from, what population you work with, and any questions you have. Feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to answer those. The only thing that I would ask is not to ask specific client questions because this isn't really a privacy and confidential platform since it's out on the World Wide Web, accessible to anyone. So I would just ask that you keep your questions to more general questions, or post some ideas. So let's get started. First thing I want to talk about really is it's really important to identify the purpose of the activities that you're going to use. So I'll talk a little bit when I show you some activities that I use. I'll talk a little bit about, the purpose. And this is what connects your activities to what is your case conceptualization that aligns with your play therapy model and your treatment planning. So what is the focus of treatment? What are you working on? And then when you're choosing specific activities, you're making sure those align. Now, over the course of treatment, you may revise your case conceptualization a little bit as you're getting more information. You may revise your treatment plan as your clients are getting better, and or your other things come up and you want to make sure to address those. Both of these are actually dynamic processes. Sometimes they change a lot, sometimes they don't change very much. To me, it's important to have that lens from the beginning because it really grounds your treatment. It grounds what you're doing. It keeps you from feeling like nothing's working and you're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks with your interventions. You feel lost and overwhelmed. It's a horrible feeling. Been there, done that years ago, and I kind of figured it out. But even when I get lost now, then I go back to my case conceptualization. I look at my treatment plan and I get myself reoriented. So it really is nice to have that structure. I'm a firm believer that a good structure helps you navigate the process. We don't want it to be too rigid, but we don't want it to just be, whatever, we'll just kind of do whatever. Although sometimes from session to session, you're kind of thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. You at least have the framework to go back to. There are times when from week to week, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do this week? And then I go back to what the problem is I'm working on. I'm going to go look up some activities. If I'm using more of a prescriptive play therapy approach, then I will think about what we need to accomplish, and I'll go that way. And it's grounded in my case conceptualization and my treatment planning. So it's a dynamic process. The thing is, your case conceptualization and your treatment planning are going to be influenced and align with your play therapy theoretical model. So for example, I would say my default mode, the play therapy model that I use when I'm working with young children, like 8 and under, is child-centered play therapy. When I'm using child-centered play therapy, I am not thinking of activities because it's child-led and it's not directive. So the activities that I'm going to share today would not be activities that you would use if you're using child-centered play therapy. They might be activities that you would use if you're using prescriptive play therapy and you're working on family connection, you're working on secure attachment because you're doing some parent-child sessions, or maybe my favorite, you're doing family play therapy sessions. And I'll give you some ideas for that today. Or maybe you're using your theoretical model is Adlerian play therapy. These activities can be used for Adlerian play therapy, and the way that you would use them would be within that Adlerian play therapy model. So you want to make sure that you are thinking first and foremost about your theoretical model that you're using, your case conceptualization, and your treatment planning that grounds these activities. The second thing, let me check in. I realize you have some comments here. I just wanted to check in, see who's watching. Hello. So we have Nicole. Hey, Nicole, back again from Colorado. Work with 4 years to 17 years. So Nicole is in my Facebook group. Welcome back. You were here last week, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and these activities, depending on Nicole, depending on what theoretical model you're using, because you work with 4-year-olds. I don't know what your theory model is. If I'm working with any children 8 and under, I'm definitely going to be using child-centered play therapy. If you're using a different theoretical model, some of these activities might fit. For the older kids, definitely these would be some activities you can use with your clients. So here's the thing. The other thing that I like to think about is that, because this is what sets play therapy apart from other theoretical models. It's what sets play therapy apart from simply pulling out games and toys and art supplies because typically when that's the case, you're still kind of using more of an adult theoretical model orientation, because usually the focus is, how do I get my clients to talk? A play therapist is not going to look at things that way, because as a play therapist, we know if we can get our clients to access these magical components, then this is what's going to help them work through their challenges and whatever they're experiencing. And if you're a play therapist, I'm going to guess you know what I'm talking about. Or if you've been watching any of my previous live stream episodes or listening to some of my previous podcasts, you probably can guess what these little magical components are that set play therapy apart from simply pulling out games and toys. And those are, drumroll please, the therapeutic powers of play. So the therapeutic powers of play, I went over this a little more in depth in last week's episode. I've gone over them in other episodes as well. If you really want to take a deep dive in these, you can read the second edition of the Therapeutic Powers of Play, edited by Charles Schaefer and Athena Drews. Charles Schaefer wrote the first edition, and that was released back in 1993, and then they did an update in 2014. So it really spells out what those are. And if you're a play therapist or you're getting grounded in play therapy or you're interested, I would definitely, this would be one of those books that I would say is a must-have for your play therapy library or your mental health library. If you're like me, you probably have stacks of books lying around all over your house of books that you're reading. That would be me. I have like stacks of books in my office over here. I have stacks of books at my office at work. I have stacks of books next to my bed. I was reading one of those last night. I have stacks of books everywhere, including research articles. Those I included in my stacks. And the Therapeutic Powers of Play would definitely be a book that you would want to invest in and have in your library. The therapeutic powers of play are how your clients access healing using play therapy. Your theoretical model is going to dictate how your clients access those therapeutic powers of play. So that's why it's really important to be grounded in your theoretical model, because that's what that's how your clients are going to access those therapeutic powers of play. And when you're thinking about, if you're using a play therapy model that uses directive activities, where you are choosing some activities, then one of the things that you're going to think about is, how is that activity going to help your client access those therapeutic powers of play? What therapeutic powers of play are they going to access? What therapeutic powers of play do you want them to access? For example, one of the 4 categories identified by Schaefer and Drews is about relationships. So attachment, social relationships, connecting, those kinds of things. So the activities that I'm going to share today will definitely access that category. They will most likely access quite a few other therapeutic powers of play, especially how you're going to use them. So understanding it's not just about pulling out art supplies and activities and games. It's about how the activities we're going to talk about today help your client access those therapeutic powers of play. And it's going to be focused on and aligning with whatever play therapy model that you're using. So that kind of, to me, that's kind of the foundation for the activities. And I know you've been waiting for those activities. I do like to do that grounding first whenever I do trainings, just to make sure it, to kind of help you and support you in your play therapy work, and supporting the ability to get more impact, have positive outcomes for your clients, and not feel like you're throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping something sticks with your activities. All right, so I'm going to share 3 activities today. One of those activities is, so I love repurposing. I think, why throw things away when you can reuse them? And it's Valentine's Day, so the likelihood somebody's getting a heart-shaped box of candy, a heart-shaped box of chocolates is very high. And back in the day, when I had a group practice and I did a lot more hands-on play therapy, and I supervised people in my group practice. We had a lot of people in there. So I would put up signs in the office, and I would ask all the play therapists to ask their clients, because I put up signs, because to me, most people throw those boxes away, those heart-shaped candy boxes, when they're done with their candy, and I would like them. So I would put up signs for people to donate their heart-shaped candy boxes to me. You can also go to the dollar store and get some heart-shaped boxes for crafts and things. So that's another option. If you want to repurpose those Valentine heart-shaped candy boxes, though, you can create memory boxes for those. They can decorate the outside of the heart-shaped box. They can decorate the inside of the heart-shaped box. And then they can put little mementos in the box for them to keep. They can get photos, put the photos in there as a way to remember their loved one. You could also use it for connection to self, right? That's one of the therapeutic powers of play, being connected to self, increasing a positive sense of self, positive self-esteem, so they can decorate their heart-shaped box and put in positive affirmations in there. And I would love to know, now that I've talked about that a little bit, if you have used heart-shaped boxes, what are some ways that you use those? Post those in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, go ahead and post those in the comments. If you're listening on the podcast, post on the comments. Let me know. I would love to hear your ideas. What are some ways that you think heart-shaped boxes can be used, and what it would be the purpose you would be hoping to achieve with those? So another activity, if you're a play therapist, you have probably heard, this might be in your repertoire of books. It's called The Invisible String. How many of you guys, posted in the comments, how many of you guys have this book, The Invisible String? If you don't have this book, then I would definitely say invest in this book. There's a couple other books that I love having in my library when I'm working on attachment with children and parents. Like, this is one, I read this one to my kids when they were little. They're young adult males now, but when they were little, I loved reading this book with them. We'd snuggle in the chair, and then I'd read this to them. It's called Guess How Much I Love You. That's another good one. Now, this is an oldie but a goodie. I hope it's still around. I don't even know if this is around. If it's around, though, this is a good one. It's by Dr. Laura Schlesinger. It's called Why Do You Love Me? Why Do You Love Me? I love this book. Like, so back in the day, this was probably back in the 90s, Dr. Laura, she's a psychologist, had this show called Dr. Laura. She was a bit on the controversial side. Like, some of the things she would say, in my head, I'd be like, whoa, that was harsh. That being said, though, the book, I love the book because the book really talks about my love is not conditional. My love is because I love you. And she uses a really great analogy in there about weather and clouds, and your love being there even on cloudy days when you're angry or mad or something like that. So I love that one because it's a really good way of having a conversation about love is not conditional from an attachment and creating that secure attachment. So today, and the invisible string, there is kind of like another version of it by the same authors. It's called The Invisible Web. So this one is a story celebrating love and universal connection. Also, if you're working with grief and loss, the death of a loved one, this is also really good to use for that. So those are some really good books that I like to share. I'm going to share a couple of activities. The Invisible Workbook. The Invisible String has this workbook. It's called the Invisible String Workbook, Creative Activities to Comfort, Calm, and Connect. It's more than 50 activities plus bonus cards. So this is a really good one. There is inside the book, there's an activity. This is kind of the worksheet that you photocopy and then you cut it out. It's called I Wish Everyone Understood. This is really about, and this you could use these with when you're doing the positive affirmations with that heart-shaped box. They could put them in there. Write things about yourself that you wish people understood, but are sometimes hard to say. It's hard for people to trust. It's hard for people you trust to know these thoughts and feelings so they can support you. Kids have a hard time telling grown-ups what they need. So this is really about supporting that connection as well. I also think you can use these hearts for them to write positive affirmations, to put those on in their heart-shaped box if they're working on improving their self-concept, and if you think of like that they count. I'm connected to myself for building that positive self-esteem. Those are some kind of Adlerian things. If you're Adlerian, that would be the way you would line it up there. There's another one. There's a way to do this in the workbook, and then I revised it a little bit for some work that I've done with divorced parents and children going between the different homes, because sometimes there's a lot of disconnect between divorced parents and it's a little contentious, and that creates some insecurity and anxiety for clients. The activity that I took this from, if you're watching or listening, in the workbook, the Invisible String Workbook, the activity is called Piece of My Heart. I revised it a little bit. One of the things that you can do is they give you some templates in here, and then you can put them on cardstock. So you could do a little one. I did this one. Actually, I went into Microsoft Office Word, and they have the shapes in there. I created this heart-shaped template, and using the Microsoft document, the shapes for the heart, just made it bigger, put it on a Word document, made it really big. So I got that template, and then I printed it out on cardstock. So it's a little sturdier. So one of the things that I did, I took that activity. You can use that smaller shape, or if I took poster board and made this giant heart. There's two of them. So I took a big piece of white poster board and drew an outline of a big giant heart. And then I used that to make the outline for the second one. So I have two of the same size hearts. So one of the things you can do if you have divorced parents and kids struggle going back and forth between the different homes, or maybe there's some tension, or, kids miss the other parent when they're at the other parent's house sometimes, and that creates some anxiety for them. If it's a really long period of time, especially for young kids, it can be a little hard for them not to be around the other parent. So one of the activities, there's two. So these big poster boards, One of the things, and I do this, you can do this as parent-child. If it's parent-child, just the parent and the child, I would use the smaller cardstock heart. If it's a family therapy session, and that's the one I'm going to share this idea. But before I do that, I have to do a little disclaimer. My dogs have entered the room. So my husband has gone off to work, and we let the dogs in into my office here, because otherwise they will scratch like maniacs on the door to be let in. Well, what happens is when I let them in, or when he lets them in, you probably heard the door creaking a little bit. But then Lily, my little dog, if you're in my Facebook group, you've seen pictures of Lily's, because I post pictures in there after she gets groomed, because she looks so cute. So Lily is under my feet at my desk. You may hear some snoring. She is a very loud snorer, but you may hear some snoring. So the other thing is, I have my other dog in here, Luna, and she's just heard me say her name, so she's gonna perk up a little bit. Luna likes to dig in the carpet around the room. She was just doing some digging, so there's a good likelihood you heard some digging. You might hear some moaning. Luna likes to dig and moan and roll around in the carpet. So don't be surprised that I'm not doing anything weird in the background. It's just my furry kids enjoying time with mom while I'm doing this weekly episode. So just an FYI, if you hear any strange sounds, that's what it is. Okay, so back to the activity. So for the activity, here's the reason there's two. One of the heart shapes, you're going to cut up. And then the other one is for gluing them on there, kind of like a puzzle. But you don't have to glue them on there. It really just depends on what you're doing. And there's so many options for creativity with this activity. So let's say you're doing a family play therapy session, and the kids are about to go, they're with one parent, and they're about to go and spend some time at the other parent's house. And for one of the kids, which is probably your client, there might be some anxiety, or they might have some challenges. So this activity is to also reduce anxiety, because it's a way to help use that attachment relationship and understand that we're connected even when we're apart, which is the amazing thing about that book, and the invisible string. And so just to kind of help them take a piece of my heart as the parent, and kids can leave a piece of their heart with their parents. So you can have, if you're going to use both templates, you can have one of these big heart shapes. Let's say there are 3 kids, then you can cut up the big heart shape, and like puzzle shapes, into 3 pieces. Each child gets a piece of the heart. And then the activity is that you're going to read the book as a family. I usually have the parent read the book to the kids. And so parent reads the book to the kids, probably have a little conversation about, the concepts that are in the book, and about connection. And even though they're separated from parent, but they're still connected in their hearts, and they're always together. Parent always loves their kids, even when they're visiting with their other parent loves them. And then each child will decorate up their parent. If there's 3 kids, then parent's big heart gets cut into 3 puzzle shapes. And then parent draws a picture or writes something like a note to each specific child. And then the child gets each one of those puzzle pieces to take with them, and they can take that with them to the other parent's house. So that's the activity. That's the purpose of the activity. Then they do the activity, and then afterwards, then you have them each talk about their puzzle piece, and they give it to their parent. Parent talks about their puzzle piece and gives it to each child, and then that way they all have a piece of their heart. So that's one activity. I took that from A Piece of My Heart activity in the workbook. You can look at that one. I highly recommend the workbook. It's got some really great activities. And the last activity that I wanted to share, just some fun things to create connection through play. And these are some tried and true. These are some of the staples that I use for a variety of things that I'm working on, which is usually creating attachment and strengthening a secure attachment with parent and child. So parent and child play balloon volleyball or catch the bubble or pop the bubble. Those are always fun. These are good for young kids as well. So that is it for today. And let me just do a quick recap. First of all, you really want to identify and think about your treatment planning that's a result of your case conceptualization of the problem. And this is going to align with your theoretical play therapy model, which is going to influence the purpose of the activities you're planning for the session if you're using a play therapy session in which you are directing some of the session. Secondly, you're going to think about the activities that you use in the session. These are going to access some or a lot of the therapeutic powers of play, and your play therapy theoretical model will dictate how your clients access those therapeutic powers of play via the activities that you're choosing. And then finally, I went over and shared 3 activities with you for connection: repurposing Valentine boxes, using some books, and how much do I love you? Why do you love me? The Invisible String are some good ones. You probably have some other books that you love using. Feel free to share those in the comments so that others, we always love a good book recommendation. And then using some activities from the Invisible String workbook, some activities when parents are divorced. You can use these activities for grief and loss, for if children have lost a loved one. I would even say some, if people have lost a pets are loved ones. Our Lily's never going to die, by the way. She's just going to live forever. So is Luna, but Lily's like my dog. Luna has picked me, so we're buddies, and I love her dearly too. But Lily's never going to die. So probably I get teary thinking about it just now, to be honest, because she's old. She's getting up there. And I feel like crying right now thinking about it. So, we love our pets. These are activities you can use for grief and loss as well. So that is it for today. If you are interested, and I would highly recommend developing, if you've listened to my episodes in the past, you probably know I talk about case conceptualization a lot. I talk about treatment planning, and these are really important skills. And so in the case conceptualization course, I go into a deep dive. What exactly is it? And questions to ask in the assessment, why you need to ask them, things to think about certain symptoms, and then taking all of that information that you've gathered, and then how do you walk through that process to create your case conceptualization. And I use examples from 4 different play therapy theoretical models of how that might look a little bit different depending on your play therapy theoretical model, and then some different kind of ethics things to think about, some tips to help make sure that you are creating that solid foundation of identifying what's going on and why is it happening. And then that influences your treatment planning. Treatment planning is essentially how are you going to help your client overcome and resolve the problem that you've identified. The outcome of your treatment planning is an actual treatment plan. One of the things I get asked all the time is, how do you write a good play therapy treatment plan? Like, for real, how do you put a treatment plan that's actually going to be useful and not feel like a waste of time for playing with your clients? The key is your good case conceptualization and your theoretical model, and that's going to help you figure out what to put in your treatment plan and how to break that down and use language that'll satisfy most agencies and insurance companies if you bill insurance. And so in the Getting Grounded in Play Therapy treatment planning, I walk you step by step how to write a treatment plan and use a theoretical model. So there's examples of the 4 theoretical models that we discussed in the Getting Grounded in Play Therapy case conceptualization course. I kind of include that in the treatment planning and walk you through the treatment planning. So they're 2 different courses. They're self-paced, they're online. You can take them whenever it's convenient for you in your own time zone. I would highly recommend both of them. If you can only start with one, I'd start with the case conceptualization. And then get the treatment planning one. If you can get them both, there's a little bit of a discount for getting them both at the same time. So you'll know that through the checkout process. When you go through the checkout process, it'll pop up and you can take advantage of the other course. So if you're interested in those courses or other courses that I have available, pop over to my website at rhplaytherapytraining.com on the courses page. So that's Renewing Hearts Play Therapy Training. And the website is rhplaytherapytraining.com. Click on the courses page. My awesome virtual assistant, Dom, is going to put some links in the comments, so you can click on those links in the comments. If you're watching me on Instagram, you can click on the links in my bio. And that's it for today, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.